Welcome to Unpacking Peanuts, the podcast where three cartoonists take an in-depth look at the greatest comic strip of all time, Peanuts by Charles M. Schulz.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. It's Unpacking Peanuts, and today we are wrapping up our season looking at Linus, Lucy, and Rerun, and I'm dog sitting. If you just heard the Snoopy standing in the background, that's Harper. I'm also your host for the proceedings. My name is Jimmy Gownley. I'm a cartoonist. I did things like 7 Reasons Not to Grow Up, the dumbest idea ever. And the 25th anniversary of Amelia Rules is right now, and you can pre-order those books at your favorite bookstore. Joining me, as always, are my pals, co-hosts, and fellow cartoonists. He's a playwright and a composer, both for the band Complicated People, as well as for this very podcast. He's the original editor for Amelia Rules, the co-creator of the original comic book Price Guide, and the creator of such great strips as Strange Attractors, A Gathering of Spells, and Tangled River. It's Michael Cohen.
Say hey.
And he's the executive producer and writer of Mystery Science Theater 3000, a former vice president of Archie Comics, and the creator of the Instagram sensation Sweetest Beasts. It's Harold Buchholz.
Hello.
And making sure everything runs smoothly and keeping us out of trouble, it's our producer and editor, Liz Sumner.
Howdy.
So, guys, we did it. We did it again. We're at the end of another season, coming up on 200 episodes. And do you have anything that you want to say to start off? We've been doing our new segment called The Thinking Wall. Anyone got something for the Thinking Wall?
I think I do.
All right, hit us.
Okay, well, I was thinking about Peanuts, which is unusual, and which characters have changed the most over the course of the strip. Because I think we agreed that Snoopy definitely, because he went from being a tiny little puppy to being an old man. So we saw the course of Snoopy's life. I would think Charlie Brown, from being kind of a wisecrack guy to being a really depressed, self-pitying individual to being sort of a normal, healthy, good friend.
Yeah.
Morphed a lot. Linus, because we're coming up to some of the later, well, not the second half of the Peanuts run. Linus has abandoned his blanket and seems to have changed quite a bit. He's not as a significant character as he was.
Yeah,
but
it seems like
I
he's
think
checked out a little bit, at least with Rerun, right? We kind of noticed that.
Yeah.
He's not involved with his little brother very much usually.
So I think those three have changed a lot. But you have characters like Schroeder, who
right.
I think is essentially the same character the whole time.
Yep. Yeah. Schroeder would have to be one of them that didn't change that changed the least, at least. Marcy and Peppermint Patty pretty much continue on their own little path.
Yeah, Marcy was kind of layers of an onion, though. We kept learning more. She's kind of deepening her character, as I remember.
Lucy, still a crabby fuss budget, but she seems a little more supportive. Certainly with Rerun, she's more supportive of him than she was with Linus, so she learned some lessons.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of characters that he was able to just maintain with an immaculate consistency all the way through. It's such a strange way to write, right? Because when you think about any other form of writing, really, maybe outside of sitcoms, you're trying to advance the characters, change the characters, and grow the characters. And somehow he managed to change, grow, and deepen the strip without a lot of characters changing. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's clearly not like a sitcom or a novel or anything. The comic strip, since it really, at least in those days, would never have an ending.
Right.
You're assuming that this is like an eternal world that never changes.
Yeah, the only I think Barnaby ended. Did Barnaby, the comic strip, end with Mr. O'Malley? Oh, going away? I think so, but I could be wrong.
I mean, occasionally they tack, the last strip, they might tack in something, but I think the cartoonists tend to live pretty long.
My favorite strip that had an ending, I think dates back to like 1913. It's in the Smithsonian Book of comic strips. It's called Old Doc Yak, and he's being evicted by his landlord, and so he's trying to stop it. He can't stop it. He tries to sell his car off. The guy bids a dime for it. He just tries everything he can to not be evicted, but he's evicted, and the family that moves in is the new strip. I thought that was genius.
That is really genius. Actually.
I think it was it the Gumps, I think, that moved in, and then
maybe.
that turned out to be a massively
really
successful strip. But I mean, obviously, it made an impact on the guys editing that collection, which is an amazing collection, by the way. If you can get your hands on the Smithsonian Book of Comic Strips, it'll blow your mind. There'll be things you've never seen before that you'll just love.
And you'll understand what Harold is talking about in every episode.
Yeah,
right.
Everybody's dead. Whoever read that strip.
That's right.
So, what do you say, guys? Should we get into this last group of
Van Pelts?
The Van Pelt?
Yeah,
I suppose.
Now,
I'd be sorry to see them go.
Yeah. Well, the Van Pelts won't be gone for long. They're around the whole run, so we'll be seeing them again soon. And if you want to follow along with us while you're listening, you can do that in a couple different ways. The first thing you got to do is go over to unpackingpeanuts.com, sign up for the Great Peanuts Reread, and that will get you our once-a-month newsletter that will let you know what's going on the podcast and what strips we're going to be covering. Now, we're not going to be able to tell you that you can find them all for free on the Peanuts Wiki, so you'll have to just figure that out for yourself. But then you can find those dates that we have, find them however, and then read along with us, and that would be great. All right, let's start it. September 21st, 1972, Lucy is hanging out in her classic position at Schroeder's piano as he plunks away on it, and Lucy says, "You have no idea how important it is for a girl to get presents. If no one gives her presents, her life has no meaning." And then she turns and looks at Schroeder, who makes no reaction at all. He just continues to pound away at the keys. And then in the final panel, Lucy says, "Aren't you interested in the meaning of life?" Now, you were talking about how some characters change and some characters don't. This whole system, this whole little bit between the two of them remained basically unchanged for the entire 50 years, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it here.
Well, this strip could have come in anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how resilient this particular setup is. We talked about the football strip, which it's a big deal every year, and how we could kind of get tired of it. But how many of these are there?
Yeah.
And I don't get tired because I'm always fascinated to see what version we get, or who comes out on top, or it just seems to stay fresh. It doesn't seem like an obligation, to make a new one every so often.
Well,
he's
and
got something to say.
That stuff too, with us like saying, "Oh well, you get tired of the football strips or whatever." That's us. That's REM fans saying they don't like Losing My Religion. That's fine. You can say that. But because those things are the things that make the world love it and make it huge. And the only way that something huge like that is through repetition.
Right.
If you did 10 football strips, it wouldn't have the impact. He had to do like 45. And it's this weird thing, I think, that you have to sort of, if you're trying to get to this level, you are going to be constantly balancing, reaching out and trying to do something for the larger audience and make it, stick in their head, and play to the people who really, really, really love it. But that's always the smaller percentage.
Yeah.
But speaking of things that didn't stay fresh, I'm not sure that if no one gives her presents, her life has no meaning really holds up anymore.
Why do you say that?
I just think that is that's a rather old-fashioned way to speak about women.
I don't know. I've seen some influencers on social media who would back this up 100%. I don't know. I
I
guess it
find it
depends
a
on.
little offensive.
Offensive?
Now, is it because it's Lucy or just because anybody would say this? Because I see materialism everywhere today. Maybe it's in a slightly different package. Maybe could he rewrite this in a way where
Yes,
you
he could
feel
say that you have no idea how important it is for a person to get presents.
okay?
The fact that it's a girl to get presents, and it's if no one gives her presents, I think it's really specifically about girls.
Okay. So if she was just talking about it generally, then that wouldn't seem
Yeah, or
out of place.
I mean, he could also make a different joke.
Mm-hmm.
November 16th, 1975. It's a Sunday, and we start off with one of those symbolic panels where it's a 3-scoop dish of ice cream. Looks like pistachio, strawberry, and French vanilla. And Lucy, her head is on the end of a spoon, which is jammed into there. Totally normal. Then we cut to Linus and Lucy watching television. And they're both on their little stools. And Lucy says to Linus, "Go out in the kitchen and get me a dish of ice cream." And then Linus says, "Say please." And then Lucy says, "I'd kill myself before I'd say please." And then Linus leaves. And Linus comes back with a little dish of ice cream and says, "Here you are." And then Lucy starts eating it. And Linus says, "You didn't say it. Thank you." And then Lucy screams, "I'd rather die." And then they sit in silence watching TV. And Linus says, "I'm kind of tired. I think I'll go to bed." And then he walks away. And then as he leans back in, he says, "You didn't say pleasant dreams." And then Linus runs away as Lucy throws the ice cream and spoon at him.
He's so pleased with himself in that last panel.
Totally.
I like that the 2 little scoops of ice cream are still intact in the bowl. I guess he didn't stay long. It wasn't melting.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, probably just the next segment of the show. Now, this is the kind of thing. Let's talk about things that are socially unacceptable. If I were to write a comic book today and submit it to Scholastic or Simon and Schuster or Disney or Dark Horse or Random House or any other publisher I worked for that said I'd kill myself before I'd say please, that would not make it.
Yeah,
I'd rather die might make it. That would be close, but I'd kill myself would never make it.
Yeah. I keep talking about old media, but I've seen there's an famous old Jack Benny Christmas special where he goes to a department store, and Mel Blanc, who was the voice of Bugs Bunny, he was the regular on the show. And in the end, he's been so driven crazy by Jack Benny having him rewrap all these presents and change them out that the punchline at the end of the show is he goes off camera and shoots himself. I don't think that would fly. There's no way.
Yeah, and the thing that always that rubs me wrong about that kind of thing is just whitewashing a piece of media while the real world stays unchanged.
Yeah,
does not help anybody.
Yeah.
Light is the best disinfectant. So just pretending everybody's, Care Bear isn't going to help anyone. December 9th, 1972. Hey, it's another one about Linus and Lucy. And Linus says, this is a sequence where Lucy is trying to talk about the fact that she has to get presents from Linus for Christmas. Another presents thing. Yeah, because she found the word sister in the Bible. And so Linus goes, "So you found the word sister in the Bible. What does that prove?" And then Lucy says, "It proves I know more about the Bible than you thought." And then Linus, giving her the side eye, casually says, "Did you find it in the Old Testament or in the New Testament?" And then Lucy says, "The what?" And then Linus says, "Aha!" And then Lucy says, "I may have to hit him again."
And he's quoting himself from many years ago when his first word was "ha."
Oh,
it's a favorite of Linus, I guess.
I don't actually think I think your guys' opinion on particularly Linus in the second half of the strip is totally skewed by the fact that you adore him so much. And I think you don't. I think the fact is everybody's role, with the exception of Snoopy, slightly diminished because the cast kept expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's the blanket thing. That was what people remember about Linus, the kid with the blanket.
Yeah, but doesn't that feel like kind of a chore and an obligation? Don't you get bored with that after a while?
Well, it was a source of some really great bits.
Oh, okay.
But he abandoned the blanket, and to me, that's sort of like,
But he didn't abandon the blanket, of
Well,
course.
he came back
There's
to it after a
dozens and
while.
dozens of strips of Snoopy chasing after it.
Yeah, but there
That's
was
what
a
I'm
long
saying.
period.
You guys see it differently because you love him so much.
Well, he was my favorite character, and
Right.
in this period, 70s, 80s, he wasn't. So he definitely was relegated to the backbench.
But couldn't that just be your changing opinion of the character? Like, couldn't that just be that he didn't change, but you changed? Like or you've seen enough of that, and now you've moved to this other thing?
No,
And it doesn't necessarily...
Schultz changed. Schultz didn't find him a source of inspiration.
Okay. June 3rd, 1976. Lucy's out in the outfield, and there must be a high fly ball hit to her, and she's like, I got it, as she positions herself underneath it. But then the ball lands about 16 inches short of her glove, and then she says, I got it can mean a lot of things.
That's a very typical Lucy play.
Totally.
This is no better or worse than most of her plays.
But I love that she has an explanation for her I got it. Like, it could just mean she just senses it. She fully understands baseball now.
Yeah.
Well, and she just really doesn't want to take responsibility for this.
Right.
So what happened? Why does the sky turn purple when the ball hits the ground?
Because
I'm glad you asked, Michael.
That they hired long afterwards decided to. Yeah, we talked to Alex about this. I don't know if Michael was on the phone with us, but at least Harold and I were talking about it at one point, where he said they have to have somebody go through and rearrange all the panels so that they match the current format for newspaper strips. So, because obviously the strip was changing size all over the years, so they're formalizing them for the reprints, and that same person goes in and colors them. So you would have to ask them why they made it purple.
Okay,
but I think it's a great look because it gives it an emotional charge to that third panel.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just if it did reflect reality, it would be weird.
Does purple reflect failure? Is that the color?
Well, maybe a cloud came by which affected her vision.
Oh,
yeah. Guys, we may be out of things to talk about this.
Yeah, time to move on to another strip.
All right, but let's take an early break here. We'll come back. We will check the mail, and we will finish off the Van Pelts. We're going to get a lot of good rerun content coming up, so you don't want to miss that. Be there or be square.
All righty. Hi, everyone. I just want to take a moment to remind you that all three hosts are cartoonists themselves, and their work is available for sale. You can find links to purchase books by Jimmy, Harold, and Michael on our website. You can also support the show on Patreon or buy us a mud pie. Check out the store link on unpackingpeanuts.com.
And we're back. Hey, Liz, do we got anything in the mailbox?
We do. We heard from a bunch of people. In our Van Pelt's episode 2, we talked about the January 17th, 1954 strip where baby Linus was crawling. And I said that it looked like a yoga pose, but I couldn't remember the name.
Oh. Downward-facing dog.
No. And friend of the show and yogi Marcia Hepps informed us that it was actually Hero's pose. And she added that that's kind of perfect.
Oh, here's that's what I do every day when I walk out of my door. I stop for a moment on the doorstep, do the hero pose.
So you crawl. So it's a crawling? It's not a crawling pose, is it?
Yeah. You.
Oh, interesting.
It's bent front leg.
I can see Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture it. That would look really strange,
People
Jimmy.
stop and they ask me. I'm like, it's the hero pose. Let me alone.
So thank you, Marcia. And on Spotify, also about the Van Pelt's episode 2, Marcus Entrolezo, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Sorry, Marcus. He writes and says, your podcast has been and will always be great. Keep it up, Jimmy and friends, and be of good cheer.
Always?
Thank you.
That's a lot of pressure.
Don't tempt Jimmy. He likes to prove people wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
But thank you. That is so kind of you.
Yeah.
We're so glad you're enjoying it.
And also on Spotify, responding to our interview with Lynn Johnston, Xavier O'Mac writes, so wholesome.
Aw. She's the best. That was wonderful to have her. I'm so happy that we've been able to talk to these cartoonists, especially the ones that got to know Schultz and that were, working at his level, as close as you can get to his level, right? I mean, she had thousands of newspapers syndicating that strip, and that was just awesome.
And she's just so open and forthright and warm at the same time. That was a real treat to get her perspective.
Yep,
absolutely.
And Richard Witt writes on YouTube, responding to our 1972 Part 2, the Toodaloo Caribou episode. And he says, perhaps it's from being a bit younger and visiting online spaces that skew even younger, but it's amazing that the June 22nd strip, and I think I'm going to cry again, which people repost repeatedly, doesn't get a mention. That strip's become iconic for its depth of pathos. It's Peppermint Patty's defining moment, and it was surprising to see it ignored. No punchline in that one, just utter despair.
Calm down. Let's see. What date is it?
June 22nd, 72.
All right, let's do it right now.
Okay.
We did talk about this one, but maybe not the episode that you saw.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So it was our Lex episode that we talked about it.
When we had Lex Fajardo, who works with the Schultz people, on, he discussed it with us. And Liz, if you can find it, could we haul out the dust off the old Peanuts time machine and put it in here?
I certainly can.
It's time for the Peanuts time machine.
June 22nd, 1972. Peppermint Patty is sitting in the grass. She's speaking to someone. She says, I stood in front of that little red-haired girl, and I saw how pretty she was. We now see that she's speaking with Linus. She continues, suddenly, I realized why Chuck has always loved her, and I realized that no one would ever love me that way. I started to cry, and I couldn't stop. I made a fool out of myself, but I didn't care. I just looked at her, and I cried and cried and cried. Peppermint Patty buries her face in her hands and says, I have a big nose, and my split ends have split ends, and I'll always be funny looking, and I think I'm going to cry again.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about that, Lex.
So this one just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And I just love, Peppermint Patty's probably my favorite character. And she's, like I mentioned before, like all the characters are really well developed. They're three-dimensional. They have internal thoughts and emotions and whatnot. And this strip just sort of illustrates just how good Schultz was at delineating character and yeah, you read this strip and how can you not feel sorry for Peppermint Patty? How have we not ourselves felt something like that? He just captures that so beautifully. And I just wanted to, point this one out because I just feel like he's such a good writer and really digs deep with this character in particular.
Yeah, that's an amazing strip. Jimmy's thought of that. This is actually a separate strip in a way. It makes me look at it in a different way, rather than this is not following the formula, which is Charlie Brown is miserable, but it's always funny.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's doing this is like kind of startling. I've never seen this one before.
Yeah, and in one of our earlier episodes, we were talking about the golf strip where Lucy goes to the golf tournament and there's all the people. And previous to that, Harold noticed that Schultz also has a gag about human interest strips, which I'd never heard that term before. I always thought of them as soap opera strips or whatever. But he is sort of Peppermint Patty. It almost is like a prototype of a YA comic. People always talk about the influence Schultz had on me, and they always say Lucy and stuff, but Amelia's most direct antecedent in Peanuts is Peppermint Patty.
Mm. Yeah.
I love this strip.
Yeah, it's just great. And the other thing I love, like you said, like the Peppermint Patty in her neighborhood is a separate universe. And as you say, it dips in and out with Charlie Brown and his gang, but that he can have these fully formed characters and just living their lives and then intersecting wherever he wants is great. And you're right, there's no gag to this. It's just, which is also, I think, what years is this? 72. So yeah, I think one of the reasons I like the 70s a lot is that he's just writing stories. He's doing what he wants to do. He's at the top of his game. He's supremely confident in his writing and his drawing, and you just see it in the strips. I don't know how this would have, and I suppose actually, if you're reading this as it came out in the newspaper, you'd be on the hook. You'd want to know what happens the next day. It's just get resolved. So again, like just a real master of the form.
Yeah, going back to I can only talk about like three things, Lex. I could talk about baseball, I could talk Peanuts, I could talk about the Beatles. That's about it. But I read an interview years ago with Greg Maddux, who's the pitcher for the Braves, and he talks about how he wasn't a fastball pitcher, but he's like, fastball pitchers are great, but once you see a guy throw a fastball at you, you're not impressed the next time. It's just a pitch, right? Even though the pitcher, is doing something that's superhuman. He's throwing a baseball 100 miles an hour into a strike zone, right? But you've seen it once. I think because Schultz has been brilliant for 22 years by the time this strip comes out, it's like, oh, well, okay. But in reality, this is radical.
Mm-hmm.
This is radical.
Yeah. And that's the other thing when I think about the other cartoonists that we've already talked about in the course of the podcast, people like, Breathed, and the other superstar, Bill Watterson, of course, Gary Larson. These guys in the 80s, they did it for just 10 years. That's what boggles my mind. It's like, for whatever reason, there was burnout. They wanted to move on. They done their stint. But if you think about 10 years for Schultz, that just barely gets us, to the end of 59. Snoopy has just sort of started to climb on top of his doghouse. Like, can you imagine if he stopped then? Like, well, we wouldn't be talking. We wouldn't have having this podcast for sure. Peanuts would have just been some weird little strip, little relic in the past. And every decade is just another, just amazing look at this guy who's just telling the story, and that's what I love about it. And that's what I think when I think of my time at the studio, like the most important publications we've done are these Fantagraphics books. Like Gary Groff and his team, man, thank the Lord that he and Jeannie Schultz did this project, because it's so massively important to be able to read the strip front ways and back ways and sideways and understand it from all these different angles in the context of who he was as his life, and what other strips happened to be on the page in 1972. And it just sort of, for me, it always opens up like different ways to think about what he was doing as an artist.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no one else could have gotten away with it.
No.
I mean, imagine Nancy doing this monologue here.
Yeah, no, wow, that's great. I had no idea this was something. I mean, it's a great strip, obviously, but I had no idea it was becoming something online, that it was being referenced a lot, or that it had resonance.
It's understandable.
So, thank you, Richard.
All right, Richard, thank you for checking in with us.
And finally, on Instagram, Rich Thomas forwarded a video posted by Patio Wagon with a Snoopy sibling tier list, which is based primarily on a video called Snoopy's Reunion.
Oh, yeah.
But the video includes siblings named Rover and Molly, and I've never heard of those.
Must be a different timeline that we're just seeing. The Mandela effect thing. That's all I could explain that. We switched timelines. I don't know Molly and the other one.
But it was a very funny tier list because all of the siblings ended up on the top tier.
Very cute.
That's great.
So that's it for the mail.
All right. Well, I got something on the hotline. We heard from a super listener, Sawyer Honeycutt, who said, "Hello, this is your fan, Sawyer Honeycutt. I was just wondering, since you all did an amazing Patrick McDonnell interview, I was wondering, could you all do Jim Davis?
Oh, yeah.
Give him our number.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to have you talk about someone who worked at that level. And you know what else I would love to know? Do you remember? I don't know if all of you guys were involved, but I did like a bunch of videos for that Professor Garfield site. That was how did any of that happen? Why was I doing this? I don't even
explain yourself. Give us the story here.
There was a website called Professor Garfield that was like an educational site, obviously featuring Garfield, and it was one of Davis's like pet projects, and it had a lot to do with creativity and art and that kind of stuff. So we did 3 videos of like we did Where Ideas Come From, and I don't remember the other ones, and like elaborately produced, for the time. This was like 15 years ago. Green screen backgrounds and animated graphics and all this sort of stuff, from back in my old TV days. I have no idea how any of that came about. Who approached us? How did it happen?
Yeah, I think you told me about it because I was working with you at the time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't involved. And it was like, who was behind getting all of that to come together? And do you remember which? So I'm just looking here online. It says it was active for 15 years from 2005 to 2020. That's a pretty good run on the internet.
Yeah.
And there were all sorts of features. And so you might have been part of Comics Lab or.
Yeah, Comics Lab. Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff in Garfield. So yeah, he'd be great to talk to.
Well, I remember Lynn Johnston saying that Schultz was actually kind of mean to him.
I think there might have been that rivalry. He was genuinely a competition for him in the 80s. And yeah, I can see.
And I think it would be hard to deal with seeing someone coming up on the outside after 25 years of you just dominating so totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't think it was all rivalry. I think there was some respect there. So we'll see.
Well, hey, Sawyer, I'll tell you what. Give him my number. Tell him to give me a call, and we'll get him on here. Actually, I would love that. There's a couple of newspaper strip cartoonists from the Schultz era I would still love to get, and he's definitely on the list. All right. Well, if you guys want to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. Because remember, when I don't hear, I worry. So you can email us. We're unpackingpeanuts@gmail.com, or you can call us or text us on the hotline 717-219-4162. We would love to hear from you. All right. What do you guys think? Should we get back to the strips? No, wait. We have one more thing.
What?
Unpacking Peanuts recommends. Does anyone have anything to recommend?
I did finish all the Amelia books.
Oh, my.
And if you can't get a hold of them, they're being reissued. It's really worth reading the whole thing straight through. All 8 books.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. And
good recommendation. I agree.
Those 25th anniversary editions are out right now, which would be great for you to order them. Is there anything else? Oh, here I have something I'll recommend. Coke Zero.
Yeah?
Love it.
What's so good about it?
It tastes just like Coke.
What?
Yeah, it doesn't taste like Diet Coke. And like Diet Coke will give me heart palpitations, make me feel like I'm dying. But Coke Zero goes down smooth and easy.
Really?
Yeah.
So we need a sponsor.
Uh-huh. That'd be good. I would sell it. If Pepsi wants to sponsor us, I'll switch.
Okay.
I'm not that loyal.
All right. Well, I've got a recommendation. Again, old media, but this blew me away. I was watching it with Diane this past week. It's a forgotten film called Broken Lullaby from 1932, directed by Ernst Lubitsch. This film is essentially a story of a French soldier who killed a German soldier in the trenches and pulled his effects out and got a letter back to his fiancée. And he is just tortured by the fact that he killed this guy.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes to the town where he killed this man, and he would just have to clear his conscience before the family. But as soon as he shows up, things start to get really complicated. And it is just a gut-wrenching, powerful movie.
Wow.
Highly
What's it called
recommend
again?
it. Broken Lullaby.
Broken Lullaby. You know what? Get yourself a Coke Zero. Sit down on the couch. Watch yourself some Broken Lullaby. It'll be a perfect afternoon for you. Because if your gut is wrenched by the movie, you could soothe it with a nice cold Coke Zero.
Wow, I just see how those synapses make you connect things in those unique ways. Just like you see in Amelia Rules.
We would be such good spokespeople for different companies.
Yeah, come on, cough it up, people.
Really?
Yeah, we'll like anything for enough money.
Have you seen the Tesla Cybertruck? It's beautiful. My God. All right, let's go back to these comic strips. April 29th, 1973. We see little Rerun, and he's screaming and crying. Wah! Linus sees it too from a different panel, and he rushes to see what's up, and he says, "Don't cry, Rerun." Rerun continues to cry. Wah! Linus, please don't cry. Rerun continues. Wah! Then Lucy comes in and says, "What's going on?" And then as Rerun still continues to cry, Linus says, "Rerun found out that he's staying home while the rest of us are going out to dinner." And then Lucy, as they walk away, says, "So what's the problem? He'll be with a good sitter." And then Rerun thinks to himself, "A sitter? That's different. What a relief." And in the final panel, he thinks, "I was afraid they were going to put me in a kennel."
Oh.
I think this version of Rerun's hair looks better than the eventual Bird's Nest hair, which is very Trumpian, by the way.
It's
Bird's Nest hair.
This is shorter, right?
Yeah. It looks in that first panel, he almost looks like 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here we have Linus not being checked out with his brother and Lucy. So kind of a bummer that poor Rerun has to stay behind, but I guess that's the case when you have a baby sometimes.
And it's all 3 of them, which we didn't see for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1973. So what year was he introduced?
I think 73, isn't it? Or 72. I mean, 72 probably, actually.
So this is really, really early stuff.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about... let's talk just about the idea that they added this character so much later. What do you think the impulse was? Do you think Schultz regretted it in the long term? I sort of think he regretted it in the short term, and that's why he felt obliged to make Rerun more of a prominent character later. What do you
Well, he's introduced several characters that just didn't work.
Right.
And get rid of them.
Right.
But
you can't get rid of a family member.
Yeah, you can't get rid of the kids. Right. So it was probably nagging at him that, geez, there's another fan Pelt. I got to do something.
Yeah. That's sort of how I feel too. It's like, yeah, he could have absolutely, if Rerun had just been a character that just in the neighborhood and he wasn't sparking joy. I don't know why that came up 7 years too late, but yeah, I think he would probably have just abandoned him totally. But you're right. Once he made him a Van Pelt, he's too integral.
Yeah. And I'm not sure when the first grandchild showed up. Meredith's child was born in 1974, so I don't know if grandkids were kind of in the mix around the time this happened.
Yeah, May 23rd, 1972, his birthday and first appearance.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, it is strange that he shows up. I mean, the thing, we've said this before, but I just feel like I've never seen a character given so much baggage from the very start by calling him Rerun.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is it's just telling you to dismiss this character.
Well, that happens in real families, of course. Do you know my dad's nickname and his brother's nickname, right? Have we ever talked about this?
I don't think so.
My dad was Rock Gownley, because he was the toughest person in the world. His little brother was nicknamed Pebbles. Uncle Pebbles, yeah.
Wow.
Because he was just a little short guy. So, like, when you're Pebbles,
yeah,
you're that. You know what I mean? That's that effect, right?
Yeah,
that's like being named Rerun. Mm-hmm. It's less interesting, smaller. It's a bummer.
Did you
So
notice it affect his personality?
I don't think, no, he was like the nicest guy in the world. Actually, no, I don't think so. I think he was the happiest person I may have ever met in my life.
Wow.
Died at 53, but he was happy for those 53 years.
Wow.
I'm older than Uncle Pebbles. Jesus. Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh, wow. But I think to me, the tough thing about him being called Rerun is that he does look so much like Linus.
Yeah,
But he
that's
doesn't
bad.
here. He doesn't in this strip.
Not
I
so
mean, well,
much.
his face
right.
does, but the hair makes him separate.
Because I think, like Michael said, he knew this was a bad idea. And so, like, the Rerun is a bad idea, and designing him to look just like Linus is a bad idea if you're going to do something long term. And I think he immediately starts fooling around with it to try to back off that idea.
Although he could have changed the name and just said, well, here's what his real name is if he wanted. That was an option, but he didn't opt to do that.
I wish there was somebody we could ask to find out what the story is behind calling him Rerun.
Yeah. Wonder
maybe the idea of Rerun, maybe the name was the first thought. Oh, and he'll be a little Linus or something. And then.
Or maybe that's him hedging his bets,
Yeah.
Don't expect too much of this character. I don't have a lot of thoughts for him. Don't expect him to be part of the pantheon or anything. Really.
And it's crazy because in 1997 in the Comics Journal, Schultz was like, and now Rerun is basically taken over the strip.
Wow.
It's amazing.
January 22nd, 1974. This is one of Rerun's earliest bits, is riding on the back of his mom's bicycle. And we see that right now. He's situated in his little passenger plastic and metal seat over the rear wheel. And he says, wow. And they're racing around the road. And Rerun says to us, riding around all day on the back of your mom's bicycle gives you plenty of time to think. Gives you time to think about people and about life. And about what would happen if we ran into a tree. So this is the first thing he latches on for Rerun to do. And what's interesting about it is a couple things to me is like the seats on the back of bikes were super popular back then into the 80s. I don't know that you can even buy those anymore.
You can here in Italy. They're all over the place.
Are they so popular?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen, like, for the girls, I had twin daughters. We had like you attached it to the back of your bike, and it was a 2-seater like thing that you would pull along. But these things, the seats on the back of the bike were pretty dangerous. My friend Frankie got his ankle caught in the spokes of his mom's bike riding exactly this way. Real bad. But it's so strange that he's like, the first thing he does with them is not like integrate him with the family, the other kids anyway, in the family or the group. He's still off by himself.
And having walked away from this strip, just living my life when I was in high school and college, I remember seeing one of these bike strips in the art building on one of the professor's doors. And looking at this, I just thought, well, that's Linus, right? Because his hair is covered by the hat. And even if I had seen the hair, I might have thought, but it looks like Linus. There's no giveaway here that it wouldn't be Linus.
What do you think, Michael, if you had seen this with no context?
Oh, I had seen it with no context.
And you would have thought it was Linus?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he almost exclusively appeared on the back of the bike made it pretty obvious, at least now, that it's not Linus. Because Linus wouldn't be riding on a seat on the back of a bike. Yeah, and then when he didn't do the back of the bike stuff, he didn't appear at all.
He didn't appear at all. Yeah, it's so strange. But I feel like the bike thing had to be something he observed. Seeing moms drive around Santa Rosa with their kids on the bike.
Yeah, and this is a tiny, tiny little piece of trivia, but I'm guessing Schultz was happy with these strips and pleased with them because this sequence ran within like the first 2 weeks of the daily strip ending, and it came out before the Sunday strips ended. So this was during Schultz's lifetime that the selections of repeat strips had begun. And I'm guessing Schultz was involved in that, and that he was picking these to be kind of where he wanted to.
Well, yeah, what he decided was 1974 was the earliest year he wanted reprints of. And then obviously,
Really interesting. Yeah.
as soon as he's like, because I had all my cast then.
And the look is not that different than where it is in 2000 relative to, say, 1958 or something.
But ultimately, one of, if not the last person that can judge their own work is the artist. You know, I think it's insane to say, well, those first 24 years or whatever, like, I mean, you know, there's some pretty good comic strips in those first 24 years.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like it also just, I think it's strangely, it's also kind of I wouldn't say it's a business thing, but it's like, yeah, I had a strip that looked different and felt different. If I want to keep this going and people to have some continuity, I can't go that far back. I have to be in this certain realm for people to accept it. It's almost like a pragmatic choice, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just really dismiss all their earlier work, but John Lennon did.
Yep.
Famously, after the Beatles broke up, that was all rubbish.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very hard, I think, for an artist to judge their own work, especially, like you say, the early stuff, because you want to be thinking you're getting better, right? That you're not now I'm doing my best work. Not
right. You're making what you want to make at the end of your career.
Right.
And if there's something that looks closer to the thing you wanted to make when you're making it at the end of your career, you're going to favor it, I would guess. Because otherwise you'd be drawing it the way you were drawing it in 1958.
Yeah.
Do people make their best work at the end of their career?
Rarely.
Some people do, but I don't think all of us do.
Very, very rarely.
It does seem like, certainly in the comic strip world, it seems like it's incredibly hard to stay in that kind of a straitjacket of format.
I would think filmmakers too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, well, isn't it weird how, you know, you had to get to a certain place in your career, like in film, you have to have made enough successful films that someone keeps hiring you. But then after a while, you then have a body of work and then you had successes, and then they're going to keep hoping that, oh, the thing you did 10 years ago, maybe you'll have a hit again to give you another chance, even if you have failure. And so you're more likely to have, just by averages, more bad stuff after your success because people give you more shots at it.
What about musicians?
Well, it's different. I mean, if classical musicians might improve with age, but I think for pop musicians, other composers, I think at extreme old age, some people say, okay, screw this. I'm just going to do exactly like Johnny Cash. I'm just going to do what I want. You know, no frills.
I wouldn't call that extreme old age.
Well, he's right before he died.
Yeah.
That's the oldest he's going to be.
Extreme in his sense. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, generally, you know, it's like physicists too. You know, most people do their best work when they're in their 20s.
And mathematicians.
Yeah.
I do think that of the art forms that you could continue to get better at, things like writing music, comic strips, writing novels, short stories, whatever, probably are among the things that you can continue to improve at. Like movie making is a hugely physical act. You know, like, I mean, if you're going to do a giant movie, you're marshaling hundreds of people and that kind of stuff. You know, acting is a very physical thing. I think I think there's a chance that the problem with the music part is, of course, that the fashions have changed. And
yes.
You're not going to be writing for 15-year-olds.
Well, the one really fascinating thing is, if you think of comedy, you think of film or television, are there any people who, let's say in their 70s, were turning out great comedy as actors or directors or writers? Do we have a track record of that, where someone was just still right in there, sharp, making the stuff that makes you laugh?
What about
is that something
Mel
that's
Brooks?
hard to?
Well, yeah, 99. Mel Brooks has a new movie out. He directed.
But in his 70s, what was he doing 25 years ago?
Probably not bothering.
I mean, I remember stuff like Life Stinks and
Yeah, no, he was on. Yeah, Life Stinks and like Dead and Loving.
There was a slump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think currently, and he's not in his 70s, but I think a comedian who has gotten better and better and better and is doing their best stuff right now is Mark Maron. I don't know if you guys know.
really?
Yeah. Well, he also does straight acting too.
Yeah, and he's very good. Yeah, he is
Yeah.
very good.
I just saw him in something the other night.
Yeah.
But he finished his podcast. So,
Yeah.
oh well.
January 23rd, 1974. He's still on the bike and he's saying, "And here we go again over the curb and out into the street." And then he begins quoting. This is very Van Pelt's. "All in the valley of death rode the 600, cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, into the jaws of death rode the 600. And then we see he's whizzing by a train car. Through the yellow light, between the trailers. And home again in one piece, I think.
Where would he have seen? What this poem is? Charge of the Light
Brigade, right?
That's the Crimean War. I mean, it's not in school yet.
Yeah, this is very Linus.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he has been reading to his little brother.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's that room that Linus has to go in to find something to read before the cereal gets soggy and there's millions of books. So
yeah,
it's a slim volume of poetry.
Yeah, the parents might be doing it.
I have another recommendation. Do you guys remember the Little Rascals where Alfalfa recites this poem?
No.
And the firecracker, he has firecrackers in his back pocket, and someone's lighting them with a magnifying glass. Like, cannon to the left of. So it's very funny.
To add to our 30s and prior.
Yeah, really.
90 years plus.
We'll do something fresh, like from 1990.
Right.
February 12th, 1995. We start off with a symbolic panel of Sally looking sad in what it looks like a torn up Valentine. And then we see she is finishing a Valentine on the next panel saying, "Love, Sally." And she's putting her coat on and telling her brother, "I'm going out to deliver my Valentines." And she does this and she goes over to the Van Pelt house and meets Rerun. And she says to him, "Hi, give this to your brother, will you?" And Rerun reads it and says, "To my sweet baboon." And Sally says, "Not baboon, baboo." And then Rerun says, "What's a baboo?" And then Sally says, "A term of endearment. Give it to him." And then Rerun goes inside and we hear from inside, "I'm not her sweet baboo." And Rerun comes back out saying, "He says he's not your sweet baboo." And a frustrated Sally says, "Of course he is. What's the matter with him?" And she takes the Valentine back saying, "Give me that." And she goes home and sees Charlie Brown, who says, "Well, did you deliver all your Valentines?" And an angry Sally says, "I only had one, and I gave it to your dog." And we see Snoopy on the doghouse reading his Valentine, and he says, "What's a baboo?" Now, I love the various failed and unrequited love affairs all throughout Peanuts. And, the Van Pelts have a few of them here with the Schroeder, and then we have Sally loving Linus. I love Sally loving Linus. I think that it's just the most adorable thing.
Yeah, and I love seeing this through the eyes of somebody who's not read the strip. He's just in the middle of the strip and he doesn't know all this history.
Right.
And that's really charming, actually. It gives us a freshness to it.
Absolutely. Very, very funny. And, this is I love, this is late period stuff. But if you look at that first panel on the second tier of Sally with the Valentine in between her lips, as she's putting her coat on, Charlie Brown turning on the TV and stuff. Or actually, I guess he's warming up his hands on the TV because the knobs are on the side. So I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going. Maybe he's adjusting the vertical hold.
Maybe. January 5th, 1996. Rerun is sitting there with Snoopy. And Rerun says to Snoopy, "I asked my mom again if I could have a dog, but she said no. I told her about good dogs who make you happy. I told her about dogs who are like friends, dogs you can talk to, And then we see Snoopy has fallen asleep while Rerun has been blabbing on them.
Z. Oh man. I don't know why, but looking at this strip, I saw 1996 and I just thought, what if I had never seen this strip before? And I don't know these characters, and I'm in 1996 pulling through the newspaper strips. How would this come across? And I was thinking, that's a pretty adorable dog.
Yeah. That was really funny.
That looks like some pretty interesting characters. It works.
Absolutely. Now, what do you guys think of Rerun's quest to get a dog? I find that gives him a lot of poignancy.
Yeah. Yep. It tells you something about the Van Pelts as well.
Yeah.
It's not a dog household. It's not an animal pet household.
Now, what about you guys? What was your first pet growing up? Not counting fish.
Does a frog count?
Yeah, frog counts.
So it jumped off the roof.
What? And you kept it?
No, we had him, and then he jumped off the roof. And then that was the last we saw that.
Oh.
That was the end of it.
What was he doing on the roof?
We were on the roof. When you live above a gas station,
Everything's above
your patio is the roof of the
I
gas
see.
station.
So he jumped off the
Wow.
patio.
Well, but then you would think it was on the ground floor.
I see.
I had no idea you lived above a gas station. My best friend growing up lived above a gas station.
It was pretty smelly.
You never
but
have told me that either.
Wow. So what was was it a rental thing, or were you related to the gas station as a family, or what was going on?
We were poor. That was all we could afford.
So, I mean, I'm not used to gas stations having second floors.
How old were you when you moved?
We were there a couple years. I remember my first pet. Also, we had a dog that they had to give back because the landlord didn't want us to have dogs.
Oh.
So heartbreak and heart-wrenching. It's a heart-wrenching
tough.
tale.
Man. Well,
I had cats.
You had cats?
Yes.
What was your first cat's name?
Pootie. Well, actually, her formal name was Marshmallow. That's what she would sign checks with, but we called her Pootie.
Oh. I came into a family that had a blind miniature schnauzer named Pepper, and I never made friends with her. She could be a little skittish, and I never figured out how to interact with her. My sister could kind of carry her around and she'd trust her. But I remember one moment, it was like under the dining room table as a little kid. I thought, okay, I'm going to try to connect to Pepper. So I'm going to go really slowly, make my way. Well, that wasn't the way to do with a blind dog. Scared her out of her wits, and she snapped at me. It's like, okay, I'm done. But it wasn't until we moved from the Rochester, New York area to Columbia, Missouri when I was 11. I was just finishing up 5th grade. And that summer, we just made the mistake of this is a 70s thing. We were walking by the pet and plant patio, speaking of patios. And it was a pet shop. And we walked in and there was this little, I don't think it was even 8, maybe it's just barely 8 weeks old dog that was there. And they let it out of the cage and it's made a beeline for me. And I remember it was winter time and it just went right up into my jacket. And I was so awkward. I was actually scared because my experience with the other schnauzer was, you can get hurt. But he was so loving and so just sweet. And I was just blown away by this little dog wanting to love me. So my parents kind of said, all right, we're going to get in this dog. And so I came back from band one day, end of 5th grade, I guess, or maybe it was, I don't know. Anyways, around that time. And I got in the car and there was a little cardboard box in the back with holes in it. And Herbie, who I named, I got to name Herbie the Love Bug. He was in the back seat and he became my dog. And
That's awesome.
Loved that little schnauzer. I said, I genuinely, he taught me how to love,
And you, Jimmy?
Yeah, when I was 5, I got a dog named Spunky. I named him after Fonzie's dog, who was only in one episode of Happy Days. But
wow.
And then we had him for a couple weeks, and then my mom decided she didn't want a dog, so he lived up with my grandmother. I split time with him like a divorced dad.
Oh.
He would come and visit me on the weekends.
Oh.
January 6th, 1996. Rerun is writing a story with Snoopy, and he's talking to his sister Lucy. And Rerun says, "We're writing a story about a little kid who wants a dog, but his mom won't let him." Here we go. It's a heart-wrenching tale. And then he hands it to Lucy, but he warns her before she reads it. Don't read it if you fear having your heart wrenched.
Oh. With Snoopy just kind of peering over the edge of the desk at Linus. Yeah, I see him and think of Linus. Rerun, yeah.
But that's very strange that in the first panel with his head leaning down, that's an odd face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love his outfit here. I really do like the overalls. I think that
the
helped
overalls
a lot
was good.
to define him as a little romper room kind of kid who's not Linus. Yeah, that was a smart move.
And speaking of, here he gets a compliment on his wardrobe in the very next strip. May 3rd, 1996. Rerun is in a swing and Sally's pushing him. And Sally says, "That's a nice shirt you're wearing, Rerun." And Rerun says, "Thank you. Actually, it used to belong to Linus. I'm the youngest, so all I get are throw-ups." Sally continues pushing him and says, "Hand-me-downs." And Rerun says, "Whatever."
That's a very modern skin.
That's always good for a laugh, a little throw out.
Very, very funny. And, he's a total hand-me-down kid.
Mm-hmm.
I also, as an only child, had tons of hand-me-downs, all from my cousins. That's a humiliating situation to be an only child and still getting hand-me-downs.
But you did get that Fonzie jacket, right?
Yeah, I love the leather jacket. Okay, but I remember getting, and they would come, my cousins would come, my aunt would come, and she'd bring like garbage bags full of clothes and be like, "Go through
It's
them."
a nice way to do it.
Yeah, right. Oh, thanks. Go through and pick out what you want. I don't want any of them. So I went up to my room with a bag and I found one with a giant Heineken beer bottle on the front. It said, "Grab a Heine." I'm like, this is
What?
it. This is the only one I want. And I walked downstairs wearing it. I'm like, this is it. This is the one I want. I was not allowed to keep it.
How old were you?
6, 7. January 30th, 1996. We've talked about this one before, but I don't care because I love it. The 3 Van Pelts are sitting on the couch and Rerun says, "Someone at school today asked me if I had an older brother who dragged a blanket around. No, I replied. I'm an only child. Then someone said, but don't you have a weird older sister? No, I insisted. I'm an only child. And so I go, day after day, dodging questions from curious outsiders." And then in the last panel, Rerun gets thrown out into the snow on his head.
Oh, man.
I think that's just a great way to sum them up. And I love seeing the 3 of them on the couch and Rerun getting thrown out into the snow.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And then reading all of that text on that one giant panel and then putting meaning into the little blank expressions on Linus and Lucy is such a blast.
Oh, it's great because they're not looking
kid.
at it. They're not,
No.
they're just watching. All right. Well, guys, that brings us to the end of our Van Pelt season. So let's sum it up. Michael, give us your thoughts having gone through just the Van Pelts.
Life is terrible.
For the Van Pelts or for just in general?
For all of us.
Oh, no.
Some of us don't even realize it. No, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, having an older sister and trying to be an older brother and being the little kid. I mean, Schultz really nailed childhood.
Yeah.
It ain't a picnic.
No. Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that like if you don't allow kids to have art that expresses that, you're ripping them off. Because I think a kid will feel more isolated, like, boy, this isn't my experience of life,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's interesting to me. You guys find this a relatively authentic portrait of a multi-child family?
Yeah.
I don't know if 2 counts as multi.
It's multi, I guess.
Well, 3 by the end.
Well,
No,
I'm talking about
his.
me and Harold.
From our
yeah,
experience,
right.
yeah.
I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah, that's another thing. I imagine when you get into having more than one sibling, when it's multiple, that's probably a whole nother thing.
It was interesting to see Rerun in this sort of squeezed timeline that, I mean, he felt like in our review today, it felt like he was a part of the family. Whereas when we actually went through the great reread, he only appeared at the very end. So he didn't belong in the same way as he did in today's review.
Right. Right. And that is an interesting thing you can do with Peanuts. You can reassemble it in any way you see fit, really, which is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. And and I think I agree, Michael, that Schultz found a way of capturing the small struggles of growing up as a kid that I wasn't seeing anywhere else in the pop culture I was experiencing as a little kid. And I've said this so many times, but it's absolutely true that, Linus was incredibly real to me. The relationship between Linus and Lucy I was constantly looking at that through the lens of my limited experience of having an older sister. And I learned things from this strip. I learned ways of approaching things, ways of seeing things, so that I was able to handle being a little brother a little bit better. Those are the strips that really, really stick with me. It's like, okay, he helped me along.
Uh-huh.
And Jimmy, you treat the stuff you did the same way, where it's like, I almost feel like Schultz is kind of looking out for me.
Yeah.
And I feel that for you in the work that you're doing, that it's done in the context of, it's not just these random characters. There's a hand behind it. There's a mind behind it. And for some reason, there's reassurance in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I just, just in that context, just looking once again at this very last strip before we wrap up here, as Rerun is sitting there and he's ragging on his brother and sister, if you're a younger child in a family, you can completely relate to Rerun. And this is a very funny strip. If you're an older sibling and you have maybe a know-it-all younger brother, or maybe the favorite or the family or whatever, who's dissing you, and then he gets thrown out into the snow, you can relate to Linus and Lucy and find it as a very, very funny strip.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard. There's no but of this joke, because it's just about the relationship between the three of them.
And everyone's getting it, right?
And yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
Do you think people in school think Lucy is weird? Why on earth would they think that?
That's the first time someone's called Lucy weird in like 50 years of this strip. And it's just like this shock of recognition. It's
but
like,
and
whoa.
maybe if you think all the kids in class who are not in the Peanut strip are just looking at this little group of kids and going, those guys are the weird.
Yeah, the ones we never see that walk by the psychiatrist booth.
Yeah.
And go, what?
Stay on this side of the street.
Right.
Well, you may have to avoid Lucy's psychiatric booth, but you don't have to avoid our podcast, because we'll be back in 2 weeks where we're going to do a special episode. We'll just let you stew in it. We're just going to have to wait. Who knows what greatness it will be.
We don't.
And then we'll announce our next season too. But this has been a lot of fun. As always, it's my favorite day of the week, getting to hang out with my pals and talk about Peanuts. And of course, if you want to keep this conversation going, there's a couple different ways you can do it. First, go over to unpackingpeanuts.com, sign up for the Great Peanuts Reread. Get that one email a month that will let you know what we're up to so you can follow along. You can also, of course, call the hotline, which is 717-219-4162. If you leave a text message, make sure you remember to identify yourself. And if you want to follow us on social media, we're at Unpack Peanuts on Instagram and Threads, and at Unpacking Peanuts on Facebook, Blue Sky, and YouTube. So with all that said, we'll be back in 2 weeks. For Michael, Harold, and Liz, this is Jimmy saying, be of good cheer.
Yes.
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 Be of good cheer.
Cheer.
Unpacking Peanuts is copyright Jimmy Gownley, Michael Cohen, Harold Buckholtz, and Liz Sumner. Produced and edited by Liz Sumner. Music by Michael Cohen. Additional voiceover by Aziza Shakrala Clark. For more from the show, follow Unpack Peanuts on Instagram and Threads. Unpacking Peanuts on Facebook, Blue Sky, and YouTube. For more about Jimmy, Michael, and Harold, visit unpackingpeanuts.com. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening.
So wholesome.